Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine Podcast Radio. You're about to listen to an episode of Your Everyday Cyber Podcast with Limor Kesem and Diana Kelly. We live in a cyberspace almost all the time, but do we know enough about living in it securely? Join this dynamic duo as they take you through an exploration of daily cyber activities and how you can make better choices to make them secure for yourself and your family. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Welcome to Your Everyday Cyber. I'm Limor Kesem, a cybersecurity professional and advisor. My co-host is Diana Kelly, a cybersecurity expert who is the CTO and co-founder of Security Curve. Over an 8-year period that tracked data on cybersecurity jobs, a stark reality emerged. The number of unfilled cybersecurity jobs has apparently ballooned by 350%, going from 1 million open positions in 2013 to well over 3 million positions this year, 2021. And of the candidates who are applying for all these plethora of open positions, fewer than 1 in 4 are even qualified, according to an MIT technology review. Of those employed in the field, there is a scarcity of women who account from anywhere between 11% to 14%, or even 20% in some places if you count some part of their job being in security. Not to mention the dearth of people of color, non-binary presenting people, and neurodiversity that's been a struggle in this field. So we definitely need a ton more people in cybersecurity from all walks of life. And many companies, especially smaller budgets and public sector, are struggling to find skilled employees and security management. And we're not going to catch up with these numbers unless we change the way we recruit people into the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting, even, the word neurodiversity, I hadn't even heard that until a few years ago, I don't think. And I'm dyslexic, so I am neurodiverse. And I spent the huge bulk of my career hiding that and never telling anybody and just covering as much as I could. And now it's kind of wonderful to see that companies now with this pit that they're in terms of this not having enough people, they're starting to open up to understand how important it is to be inclusive and to not just have people that are, from different backgrounds, different educational, even neurodiverse people, but also to encourage them and understand how they're actually feeding into the whole company and making the company better overall. And one of the most interesting things in cybersecurity is just how vast this field has gotten. Early on, unless you were a tech person sitting at a keyboard and managing systems or reverse engineering malware, you kind of weren't in cybersecurity. But cybersecurity is everywhere now. So we need people not just from diverse backgrounds, but with diverse talents too, that bring different learning from different parts of cultures and backgrounds and locations, and also different skill sets too, bringing that in, needing people with legal skill sets and psychology backgrounds and sociology and graphic designers to help explain these tough ideas to others. So it's great to see that we're increasing who we're looking at, and I think it's going to make the practice of cyber better. And if there's one other thing that maybe if there's a tiny bit of a silver string, I wouldn't even say a silver lining, but there's a silver string in COVID, it's also taught us that for many of these jobs, where you are doesn't matter as much as who you are and what you bring to the organization.
And that is true. I find that, there's so much opportunity now with work from home to bring people in from other fields, from other locations. Maybe they don't work close to the, office hub of a major tech company in the city of X or Y, right?
Right.
But, we need them, and they probably have talents and skills that we really could use. So to talk to us about the many roles that can open the door to transferable skills, we have with us today Kathleen Smith. Kathleen works at Clear Jobs, and she's been focusing on helping people develop and understand skills they can bring to the cybersecurity table. And she's right back from the DEF CON career hacking village that she started. Kathleen,
Yay.
welcome to the show.
It's so wonderful to be on the show and so wonderful to finally meet the two of you. I think we've all three been Twitter followers for years and have sort of missed each other at the conferences. So it's great to be here virtually with both of you.
Indeed. It's true. Thank you. And, Kathleen, cybersecurity has become such a hot field to work in. But is that translating into people coming and looking to work in this branch of technology?
So really great question to kick off this discussion, because just like any industry, you have a catchphrase. And my previous career was in the nonprofit world. And we, especially in conservation and environmental, and sustainability came out as this big term. And everyone was using sustainability. And everyone said, I need to be sustainable, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And all of a sudden, we had this surge in practices and guidelines, but no one actually knew what it was. Now, that is not exactly what's happening within cybersecurity, but we're seeing this just huge uptick. As you pointed out earlier, the numbers have just, increased 350%, but neither has the training of the recruiting and HR professionals. And this is one area that I always talk about, that if you're in the field and you hear the angst and the frustration of the job descriptions not being written well, or the recruiters not knowing what to ask for, and you see the memes about how awful the recruiting and HR people are in this industry, it's blown up so much that recruiting and management has not caught up. We're now just talking about making sure that cybersecurity is part of the C-suite, but that really hasn't trickled down to the people who are interviewing and recruiting and hiring and managing their cybersecurity staffs, their tech staff. As far as this leading people getting into the community, we're seeing one aspect, which is a lot of people rushing into the industry, not knowing what it is, nor knowing what they want to do, nor knowing if it's something that is going to be fulfilling for them as a career. I was at the Women in Cybersecurity celebration that CyberWire puts on every year, and standing with a very famous person in our community, Cindy Gula, and she and I were talking to some students, some young women, and we said, what do you want to do? I want to get into cybersecurity. Like, well, what aspect? Cybersecurity. No, did you want to do forensics? Did you want to do cryptology? I just want to do cybersecurity. And this is the challenge that I run into when I mentor a lot of young students, that they're star-crossed as far as coming into this industry. They think that they're going to be Mr. Robot. They think they're going to make a lot of money. And I really say, what are you passionate about? If you are passionate about solving problems and breaking things in and making them better, then maybe this is an industry for you. But if it's not, please don't spend the time trying to apply for a job, get a certificate, get the college education for cybersecurity. It's not something that inspires you. There are so many people who are in the industry who have had a lot of experience, but they don't consider themselves a cybersecurity professional. And that has been a very interesting thing for me to watch. And one of the reasons when I first went to B-Sides Las Vegas in 2015, I did a lot of interviewing, just sort of, people who were looking for a job. And I said, what are you doing right now? And they would say they were a pen tester, or they were a SOC analyst or something like that. And they said, I see all these cybersecurity jobs, but I know I'm not cybersecurity. I was like, wow, we have even an education challenge within our industry as to what truly is cybersecurity and what is a cybersecurity profession. That has evolved over the last 5 to 6 years, but we still have a long way to go. I think we have a lot of open positions across the board, as you pointed out, public sector, government, commercial, nonprofit. We have so many open positions, but I don't think we fully know what we're looking for. And I don't think many of the people who are in the profession who want to create a career in cybersecurity they don't know how to do that. That's why at several of the events that I'm involved in, we have career coaches, people who have been in the industry 10 to 15 years, who have had a varied background and have jumped around and have changed their roles and grown them, and really try to set sort of an example that you don't need to stay in one swim lane your entire career. If you have specific technical skills, you can grow beyond that. So to your original question, is this translating people getting into this branch of technology? It is pushing the needle in some ways, but I think we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, so Kathleen, I love that when you talk to people and you ask them what part of cyber that they want to be in, because that's exactly what I do too. And very often I hear really similar answers, which is just, well, there are jobs and the jobs are well paid. So people are like, that's where I want to be. But you're so right. It's got to be that they've got to have some passion for it and problem solving. And I wouldn't say necessarily masochistic, but in cyber, we're very rarely the heroes, right? We're either, if we get it right, people go, that's great, everything's working as expected. I guess, thanks, security team, and if we get it wrong, then it's all our fault. So that's another one that, so I love that guidance that you're giving people, because it's really, I think it's spot on. And another thing that comes up again and again is when people do want to go into cybersecurity or are looking at how to grow their career in cyber, because cyber isn't it's not a straight line for many people. The question is, do I go back to school? Should I get a bachelor's in it, or maybe I should get a master's? Or a lot of people go get PhDs even now in cybersecurity. Is there specific training I should get? What about getting a certification? They always want to know, what's the thing that I'm supposed to do? So what's your advice on what they should do? And if they have, what are the transferable skills that they might have now that they can bring into a cybersecurity career?
So knowing that we're talking to a global audience, I should point out that there are several studies that compare the education and experience need per country, specifically the 5 Eyes. And it's interesting when you look at a comparison of the minimum education requirement in the United States compared to Europe or the Middle East, we're on the low end. As far as minimum requirements, it's usually in other countries, it's a master's or PhD. So my experience is just in the United States. So that's what I will speak to. And yes, there are lots of programs out there, lots of certificates. The first is this something that you want to do? Back to our earlier question that we were discussing. Don't go and get the certificate, the education, any of it, unless you have competed in a capture the flag, a CTF, unless you have done some kind of thought analysis as to what you want to do with your career. My undergraduate careers are in biochemistry and law. How did I end up in marketing? I have no idea, but it's something that grew out of passion. So that is the first thing, is what is your passion? I know a lot of people who go into veterinary school or go to medical school or become an artist. They know that they want to do this. Don't get into this if you're chasing the money and you're chasing the fame. That is not where it's going to be. If you have an inkling that you think this is something you want to do, the first thing I would do is I would first say, please volunteer at a conference. And the reason you want to do that is you want to start working with people who are in the industry and see if these are the kind of people that you want to be a colleague with. I know that when I started working in sales and marketing, if I had known the kind of people I would be working alongside, I would have gone running for the hills. Same thing when I moved my career into nonprofit marketing and ended up working at World Wildlife Fund. If I had known the kind of people I would work with, I would not have continued that career. I had in my mind a passion of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know the realities of the kind of job. So once you have really worked in sort of volunteering virtually or in person for a conference, and you start to build your network and you competed in a CTF or you've done a lock picking village and you understand that these are the ways you're going to work, then I would look at getting one of the certificates. Then seeing how much work goes into not only getting your basic certificates, but understanding that your ongoing learning is going to be a requirement throughout the span of your career. Are you someone that likes to continually be working, continually solving problems? That is not for everybody. There are people who don't like to solve problems, but if that is you, then find the certificates. And then once you've determined where you want to specialize, is it cryptography? Is it forensics? Is it security policy? That is when I personally would recommend going and getting some kind of degree. And getting a degree, we talk about this a lot in the community. Do academic institutions provide us with the real life education or real, frontline knowledge that we need to have our career? And I know in my educational background, I have a few additional degrees. I can tell you that it doesn't provide me the real life education I need to solve problems day to day, but it did open my eyes to different thought processes, different ways of sort of communicating the problem and the solution, and also opened my eyes to different people. So those are sort of the recommendations that I usually make when I'm doing career coaching. As far as the transferable skills, we really talk about problem solving in this community. It is always a problem. And so if problem solving, looking at the big picture, is something that you're interested in or something that you really like doing, like I'll walk someplace and see something being wrong and I will immediately start solving the problem. Even though no one asked me what the problem was, even though, it isn't my business, I will solve the problem. So problem solving is one. Initiative is another. So many presentations have happened at the large conferences and the small, and all executives within this industry will say initiative and problem solving are two things that they cannot teach. They can teach you the technical skills, but if you don't have the problem solving and the initiative, all the degrees in the world are not going to make you successful in cybersecurity. The other is a new skill that I'm seeing coming up, which I actually started with 30 years ago, is being able to translate a technical problem into a non-technical problem. And this is a burgeoning field that I see within our community because we are now inviting cybersecurity into the C-suite. We are now inviting and asking for recommendations, but the people who are asking for the recommendations are business, finance, management people who do not have our technical skills. So we need to be able to translate what is a technical challenge into business risk, technical challenge into workforce management risk. We need to be able to translate. And this is where I think women are so much better at this than men are, and being able to communicate and be able to demonstrate the difference between, a technical problem and a technical problem that's going to create a magnified risk.
This is truly extraordinary advice. Thank you so much. So I guess, if we're looking at the first cybersecurity job titles that people should aim for when they're just planning to pivot, I think, at this point they can deduce, find out what you want to be, find out who you want to be, or, based on who you are now, and then figure out what kind of title you would want to have in this field and start working towards that. Would that make sense?
So job titles are really hard because every company calls something different. And this is true no matter what the industry. In the security cleared community, we actually have to change the names, the titles per government contract. It goes from pen tester to pen tester 1 or something like that. We have to change that. So it's really hard to sort of put a pin in the bulletin board and say, look for this kind of job. I've heard from other experts, because I am not the expert in this, but I have heard from other experts who say, start out with pen testing or start out with an analyst. Start out at something where you're part of the team. I think the challenge is many times people try to be a sole contributor when they're a first time entry into the industry. You learn from others. You are part of a team. That is the best way. Teams can be both black, black and good. Sorry, I didn't mean to say black and good. I meant black and white. Sorry, a little tired from DEF CON as far as, good, a good team dynamic versus a toxic team environment. I really think that looking at any of the analyst positions, the junior analysts, I know that several of the people I know who have advanced in their careers didn't look for any kind of technical first job. They actually looked for something else and then looked at the security challenge from a different point of view, either from a policy point of view, a workforce management issue, or a privacy issue. So this is a tough one for me to answer, because there are so many different company titles out there that are not in parallel with what the technical job is.
And speaking of that, Kathleen, and looking at the technical job, you said earlier, some people think they're going to go into the field and suddenly they're Mr. Robot. But a lot of us really have come from a more technical side. And even when you were giving examples of jobs, you were saying things like, do you want to be in forensics? Do you want to be in cryptography? And these are fairly technical practices. But not every job in cyber is technical, right? So what are some of those other what are some of the other skills that you think people need, and what are some of the areas in cybersecurity that maybe are a little bit less technical do you see are really going to be, needing people to fill those roles in the next few years?
So the real one is going back to that translation skill. And this is, I was so thrilled when we did a panel 8 years ago, and there was someone in the audience and they were asking a lot of questions. And I said, can you tell me where you work? And they actually said, well, I can't. I can tell you I work for a quasi-federal agency involved in finance. So I was like, okay. I said, why are you here? And they said, I've been working at this same place for 16 years. I know the business model inside and out, and I'm stagnating in my career because there really isn't any other place for me to go. However, my management came to me and said, the growing field of security and in our industry is just overwhelming, but the finance and the finance regulation. Can you please investigate this to see if it is something that will inspire you to continue working with us and continue a career in finance security? I was like, can I just scream hallelujah that somebody's getting it? There are so many different business models that are now impacted by cybersecurity. We can go down the list, but they basically impact 99.9% of our lives. So if you really love that you're in hospitality, healthcare, retail, banking, gambling, any regulations, utility, any of those mills, if you know those business models and you know the people that are impacted, the customers, the stakeholders, the employees, and you can provide that business acumen to the security problem, you have just elevated yourself and the company that you're part of to the forefront, because you're understanding the security risk from the business standpoint. One of the panels that we had for Higher Ground was the healthcare security panel. And Mike Murray, dear, wonderful friend and such a leader in our community, talks about how he, as a security person, walked into a large healthcare corporation and started sort of saying, we need to do this and we need to do that, and you are all backwards because you're not doing it this way. And he was very fortunate to have someone come to him and say, this is the reality of our business. If you're in an emergency room and the doctor can't remember the password to get into the computer that's going to save your life, do you want that to happen? Or having someone come in and say, I need to patch everything in this hospital with a new Windows patch or something like that. And you have to say, that's $100 million expenditure because we would have to get all new equipment. So these are sort of the areas that are growing right now, is how can you, as someone who understands the business, really put forth the security components into that business model.
That is true. And it's, of course, very insightful. I would say, Kathleen, what are 3 top things that you'd advise to people that would come to you for help? Let's say we want to have a path into cybersecurity. What are the 3 top things that they can do right now and take away from this chat?
So the first is becoming involved in the community. And this is something that I wish anyone would do as far as looking at any career, is looking at the community first, because we all know about burnout, but having a community is a way that you can stave off any kind of burnout. So getting involved in the community, be it online, be it in person, finding out just a little bit more about what drives this community that you're going to be part of, this cybersecurity community. The next is getting some hands-on experience, and that is CTFs, that is building a NOC for a conference, that is, moderating something on Discord, really looking at getting some hands-on, what are the problems? Because we can look at a career path academically, but until you get into really solving the problems, you're not going to know the kind of work you're going to have. And finally, really look within yourself and say, is this a place I want to be for the next 10 to 15 years? And, we said earlier, the silver thread of the pandemic is remote work. And I think it's more of a silver lining, because one of the first things that was always shared with me looking to a career in cybersecurity was I had to move to one of the large tech cities. But now that has been thrown out the window, and remote work has just changed the landscape so much, especially in the tech field. So really looking at, do you want to be involved in this for the next 10, 20 years? I've been fortunate to have 3 different careers, and I had to start over each time, and I really didn't like that. But I think that saying that you want to evolve your career skills into another community, that this is the next great place for you to be in.
That is, and I think that no matter where we are in our career, a lot of times we feel that, this nagging itch that we want to evolve, we want to continue going into different directions, whether it's upwards or lateral movement within stuff that we do. So I really appreciate everything you've told us. Thank you for talking to us about this important subject today and bringing your experience to our audience. Staffing the cybersecurity domain is part of national security. It's part of critical infrastructure protection, and it's in every other part of our daily lives. And like Kathleen said, it really affects everything and everywhere. So thank you, our listeners, for being with us today. I hope that this episode was helpful to you and will entice you to learn more and maybe even look into ways to enter the cybersecurity workforce. Please follow the podcast and get involved. You can reach out to us on Twitter at cyber_everyday or LinkedIn. If you wish to send us some questions in advance or suggest topics for upcoming episodes, we have an email address at youreverydaycyber@securitycurve.com. Our podcast page has more details for you and resources from each episode, including information about what we spoke about today and about Kathleen. So thank you everyone for tuning in today, and stay safe out there.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Your Everyday Cyber Podcast with Limor and Diana. If you learned something new and this conversation made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.